Welcome back. You can sit in your seats for just a little while. I know I'm giving you all a lot of exercise. There's a point behind it. We're trying to get you empty, as empty as you can be. Because God requires space. If we don't give space to God, He has no way for us to have an awareness of Him. If we don't create space, then we're not aware. And the act of creating space is our gift to God. So who is in the center? Who is in the center of our lives? Who is in the center of all? That's what we wish to focus on today. Where shall I look for God? Here. What will happen? He's happening right now. Then why don't I experience Him? Because you don't look. What shall I look for? Nothing. Just look. At what? What's your eyes alight upon? Must I look in any special kind of way? No. Why ever not? Because to look, you must be here. You're mostly somewhere else. This little tidbit from Anthony DeMaio really speaks to the wrestling we do with our minds when it comes to God. We think we have to do it a certain way. We try to come up with instructions. We try to come up with a way, any way but His way. Our way is always bad. Our mind's way is the way for most of us. And in this journey, it's the journey of inverse thinking. In other words, what you think you need to do with God is what you don't need to do with God. In fact, what you think you don't need to do with God is what you need to do with God. So we were sort of conditioned to think our way through this process instead of feel our way through the process. We were conditioned away from our hearts, because after all, we're supposed to protect those. And yet those are our greatest strength. That's what got me through all those years. In the end, when I surrendered, God was within my heart. My mind didn't do diddly squat. It spun its wheels. Now, I will read the screen, so you do not need to take notes, and you do not need to strain to listen or strain to look. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a world where everybody said we don't know? The fact is, you're surrounded by God, and you don't see God, because you know about God. There's a difference. The final barrier to the vision of God is your God concept. What you think about God. Well, God isn't in your mind. What you think about God is what your mind has made up about God, or what you heard from others about God. But it is not your experience. You miss God because you think you know. The highest knowledge of God is to know God is unknowable. Now, the mind does not like that at all, the mystery. It wants to explain it away. All revelations, however divine, are never any more than a finger pointing at the moon. And as we say in the East, when the sage points to the moon, all the idiot sees is the finger. And most of us just rely upon what we think about God. And we ignore entirely experience of God, except on Sundays when we go to church and we feel God's presence. Other than that, most 24/7 days, we spend, if we think about God, we're lucky, but we don't feel about God. Now, I'm not trying to offend anybody who does. I think that's great, if you feel about God. That's where we're headed. Now, this is an interesting concept, and it leads us to something that Jesus said. In order to arrive at what you do not know, you must go by a way which is the way of ignorance. Right? In order to learn something, you have to have a space in which to learn it. In order to possess what you don't possess, you must go by the way of dispossession. Because if you don't have the space to possess it, then you can't possess it. In order to arrive at what you are not, you must go through the way in which you are not. And what you do not know is the only thing you know. That's the only truth. And what you own is what you don't own. And where you are is where you are not. Now, if you're all royally confused, that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Because what we're trying to do today is to take that mind and diffuse it. You can't think your way through this process. There's just no way. God is not in your thoughts, not the way you wish Him to be. He's in your heart. So let your mind let go. We miss seeing God because we think we know about Him. We've been told in church, we've been told by our parents, we've been conditioned in school, we've been told in so many ways, shapes, and forms what God is. Now, can we separate what we've been told from what we experience? Or do we accumulate it all together? Because in order to fully experience God, you have to let go of what you've been taught. Not that it's wrong, but until you experience it, you don't know it. You cannot learn something that you think you already know. So for today, we don't know anything about God. We are going to let God tell us about Him or her, however you see God. I see God, I call God Him, so please be patient with me. As long as you have certain desires about how it ought to be, you can't see how it is. So if you have any sense of how today should be, wipe it from your mind. Because you'll only be disappointed. Today's going to be your ego's biggest disappointment. You're not going to go home with a list of how-tos. And you're not going to go home with instructions or things to follow necessarily. You're going to go home with a deeper experience of God. We have to be envious of what we think we know about God, because what we believe and disbelieve gets in the way. We have to use this space instead for God to teach us about Him. The door to God is the insecurity of not knowing anything. Bear the grace of that uncertainty. Take a leap of faith, and all wisdom will be yours. We're in a day and age of having to know everything. And not only that, having to know everything right now. And if it doesn't come to us right now, our minds lose patience with it. Today, do not allow your mind to lose patience with God, because God does not have a clock. He does not wear a watch. His time is eternity. We're in man-created time. So let go of that for today. We must open our space to listening today. Open to how God speaks to us. Open to God's consciousness. That's an awareness of God. An experience of God. Putting God at the center of all. We need to see everything from the center. God. You know, most of us see everything from the center being me. And what does this mean to me? Mystics, they see God in the center of all and see God first. And we last. The earth and the sky will open up their purse for you, and your life will change if with your heart you say these words each day. Teach me, dear God, all that you know. So as I said, today will be your ego's biggest disappointment. And if you catch yourself being disappointed or having some expectation of what today would be, I ask you to let go of expectations, because we never supersede them. We only look to see if we've met them. And with the mind always looking for something wrong, most of the time we don't. Don't let today be about that. Let today be about you and God. Let today be a new beginning, an empty slate. All your life and all your experiences, you can follow a roadmap. You can look back. They have all led you to this. It all has come to this moment, as always. It's always come to this moment. But look at this moment today and what you're doing and what you're wishing for with God. That makes it an entirely more significant moment than most of our moments. God pulls us to Him when we give Him our space. When we give Him our space, we call Him. It's not that He's not always there, but when we give Him the signal of, look, I'm giving you my space, He works inside that space. And He pulls us back to the union that we were born to. Because in the truth, your heart and God are together as one. It sort of started like this. You began as a spark of God. When you came out of the birth canal, you were a spark of God. You were a spark of God before. But your awareness when you came out of the birth canal was of the present moment. It was of I am. It was of the truth. You weren't thinking about the future. What am I going to do now? That didn't occur to you. And you weren't thinking about the past. Oh, I wish I could go back there. Because that was not a comfortable space to be in as your body expands. You were thinking about now. Oh, what do I see now? And that's life. That's the beginning of life itself. And so later on, as you started to grow and become more aware, you started to develop into the true self, the heart center, as I call it. And that has the seeds of the Spirit inside it, seeds that God planted in all of us, seeds of compassion, kindness, hope, love, peace, simplicity, gratitude, generosity, seeds of kindness. All the beautiful things you are were planted there within your heart. And those things were supposed to be growing inside you. Those things are who you are. The infinite heart with God in the center. We. And that's why with God all things are possible. Because it isn't you alone. It's we. This is perfection. This is the only part of you that's perfect. Your minds are not perfect. They never will be. Seeking for imperfection all the time. This is the part of you. When someone says, who are you? This is who you are. We. And so you continued your life with the eyes of a child, seeing all this beauty and love and infinite possibilities until things got a little more complicated. Because with the mind, it always does. The mind complicates everything. The mind is a fabulous tool when used in the ways we're supposed to use it. Calculate, plan, figure out. When it comes to God, the mind knows nothing except what it's been taught, not what it's experienced. And so, we started to become conditioned. We became so conditioned with academics, theology, consequences, punishment, things we've been told, shame, guilt, things we have, having pride, being the victim, things we want, fear, things we need, the need to be productive and to keep busy, judging. Oh, that's a big one. Judging ourselves, fearing the judgment of others, right? Technology. Oh, how long does it take before you look at your cell phone today? Are you addicted to picking that up and looking at that? Greed, things we can't control. Oh yeah, we think we can control everything. Things we read about, what we should be. And it goes on and on and on. And this mind prison makes our hearts heavy. It gets filled up. And we say, life has become a burden to me. My life this is burdening me. Because our minds become so heavy in thoughts. And we no longer feel what's within our hearts anymore. In fact, many of us stop caring what's in our hearts. Many of us don't know. This is what happens to us when we go off to school, when our parents tell us we're doing something wrong. And it's meant to serve a purpose back then, this conditioning, to make us a part of society, to make us compliant. But it's more than served its purpose when we're 35, 45, 55, 65, 85, and we're still listening to this conditioning that has gotten in the way of how we feel. And it's hard for us to find our hearts. This is where we get caught, because this mind prison goes round and round and round all day. And we chew on what I call this mind candy. And that's some of what I asked you to get rid of this morning. So today, we're going to let go of mind candy. We're going to drop your story. And that has to do with anything other than who you are. Today, you are the union between you and God. We, with the seeds of your beautiful spirit, and a child of God is all. Be humble. Don't be what you are today. That's not important in this journey. Drop your load. Remember who you are. Drop any image of how you think it should be, and drop any image that fills your space. You'll find yourself trying to give some space to God, And then some people just come right into it. Write it down. Just write it down and get rid of it. The mind's happy when you write it down. Wake up to the freedom that comes with a lighter load. Okay? You want to be light, not heavy. You want to fly, not be grounded by heavy baggage. You have to lose your way to find His way. And that sounds scary to some people. Oh, but I worked my whole life to get here. Well, I'm not talking about your work life. I'm talking about your time with God. You have to lose your way, the way you've been doing it before, unless you're feeling great results, to find His way. Those who find their life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Today we give Him that space. The space of losing your way to find His way. We have to be empty. And not just empty, but also open. Our arms out like this. Give it all. Give up. And quiet. You need to find God, and He cannot be found in noise and restlessness. God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, flowers, grass grows in silence. See the stars, the moon, the sun, and how they move in silence. We need silence to be able to touch our souls. It's in the silence of our hearts where God speaks. There is a voice in your heart that's not as loud as the voice of your thoughts, not as loud as the voice of your mother's voice. Sometimes we hear God as condescending and putting us down and criticizing us. That is not God's voice. That voice is the voice of a parent in the past. That voice is the voice of a teacher who made an impression on you, or an aunt, or somebody who criticized you in your life. Let go of that voice, because the voice that's beneath those voices is gentle, is kind, is loving and peaceful, is encouraging. He doesn't tell you you do it wrong. He shows you how to do it right. Silence is space. That's one kind of space. There are many kinds of space. There are spaces in a moment that you can take in your life. You can go to the bathroom and take space. You can just stop and look out the window and take space. Silence is one kind of space. And it's within this space today where we're going to begin to feel God is in the center of all and more. So what is God consciousness? God is in the center of me. And it's from that God place that I see God in the center of all. So today we're going to be we. I want you to become aware of that we. Be our union with God. A consciousness of possibility. A consciousness of infinity. Where you never try to understand it all. Where you know God is in it all. And by knowing this, and knowing who you are, we, the union between you and God, you feel connected to all. We walked away from that union when we went out to explore the world and decided to value what we think more than what we feel. It's time to walk back. And all we need to do is uncover our way back. It isn't learning from outsiders. It's learning what's covering us inside. form and formless, visible and invisible, within to without. A consciousness where we honor both what we can see and what we can't see. In other words, we don't tend to think something's real unless we see it. Well, the world of God is such that you don't see any of His realness when He does things for you unless your eyes are open. The other day I was standing on the bridge and I was in a moment where I was thinking a little too much, and I stood there on that bridge. And I always look for the blue heron who's on the lake. And that day he wasn't there. And there was this runner who was going to run by me, making me feel a little bit closed in. And I said to God, "Where's the blue heron?" And He said, "Stand there and wait." And I didn't. I kept walking. And 5 minutes, well, not 5 minutes later, probably it was more like 2 minutes later, as I was walking, He started to fly overhead, over me, and land in the lake. If I had been standing on that bridge, I would have seen it happen where he was coming from and all of it. But the fact that he was in the air and landing on the lake just when I was looking for him was something that my mind would never let me believe, that it could be God doing that. Things like this, when you become aware, they happen all the time. They can happen 15, 20 times a day. If you just keep your eyes open, and you keep your heart open, and you take the leap of faith that is God. God consciousness helps us to become aware of God. It helps us to learn to feel the unseen. With our minds, we believe only what we see, and we conceptualize this. I'm hearing a very high frequency sound.
I think that's us.
Okay. We ignore what we cannot see and what we see. If you believe only what you see, you are only at the surface. And if you believe only what you see, then why do you pay your electric bill? And St. Augustine said it so beautifully because it's exactly like he said. Faith is to believe what you do not see, and the reward is to see what you believe. It's not that your mind makes it happen. And that's out there in some of the New Age teachings. It's not that your mind makes it happen. What you believe is aligned with God. And God creates that. Take it to the center. And because our minds don't want to rest, we have to have awareness of this too. Your minds do not want to rest, and you will see that today. Some of you probably have already seen it. It's hard to get stuff from coming into us. We have to have an awareness of this. We have to wake up to that when we commune with God. So when your mind doesn't want to rest, don't think of it as a tragedy. Don't read a story about it. Just be awake to observe it. And when you observe it, you are present. Restlessness. When you're restless, is your mind's refusal or resistance to rest. The more restless you become, the more you need that space. You find yourself can't get interested in anything, can't get going on anything. Your mind has taken over. You need to let go. Remember we and create some space to just sit there and be in the present moment. God-centered consciousness is our awareness of the part of us that observes without processing and perceiving. See what is. Don't create a story about it. Don't come up with a perception of it. Just what is. That's present. It is the I am inside you, inside your heart, part of the we. We can also call it unconditioned consciousness. It's the part of us that lets go, uncovers to the point of no conditioning anymore. That's what we want to be. It's God at the center with thought. Then your perceptions are created. You don't want to go to the point of thinking about it. You just want to go to the point of seeing what is today. God consciousness is infinite, it's eternal, unlimited by thought and perception. I am, unrefined by the ego. Our minds limit everything we see. Don't allow that to happen. Don't limit yourself. See what is, all things are possible. Mind is consciousness which puts on limitation. You are originally unlimited and perfect. Later, you take on limitations and become a mind. Today, we're not going to become a mind. We're going to be the heart, underneath the mind. Most people live, whether physically, intellectually, or morally, in a very restricted circle of their being. They make very small use of their possible consciousness and of their soul's resources, much like a man who, out of his whole body organism, should get into the habit of just using his middle finger. And that's how we are with the heart. We seldom focus there. We don't use it. Not as much as we wish to. We seldom have the intimacy and silence to hear the voice of God. And we seldom listen. As we fill up God's space with so many words and so much thought and so much to do. I commend all of you for being here today and giving that all up. So how do we hear God? Whenever we wish to, from with emptiness, openness, and vigilant silence. Vigilant silence is different than the kind of silence you are all used to. You're used to letting silence pass and just getting peaceful. This is different. This is silence waiting for something to happen. Silence with awareness. Empty, open, and vigilantly silent. Look for God in the center of all. And I guess if you want to try to describe vigilance, it's like opening this moment as if you were opening a gift. There's that old saying, that's why they call it a present. Right? The present. Be vigilant like you are waiting for something to happen. And the moment you realize you're not present, you are. So that's important. Okay? You have an awareness about your presence, not thinking about it, but an awareness. I'm not present anymore. Our eyes are holden that we cannot see things that stare us in the face until the hour arrives when the eye is ripened with awareness. And we behold them, and the time when we saw them not is like a dream. All of a sudden, it's like, the Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy comes out of that house after it's spun to the ground and walks out into a world of color. simply uncover all the stuff that's getting in our way. We just write it on a piece of paper today. Just write it down. Get rid of it as soon as it comes to you. You're uncovering a part of yourself that you have not seen in a very long time. Our union with God has been staring us in the face. And each time we choose to fill up God's space and think of more important things, we step away from it. Today, be very conscious that every time you try to fill up the space, you're stepping away from hearing God. Why is everyone here so happy except me? Because they've learned to see goodness and beauty everywhere, said the Master. Why don't I see goodness and beauty everywhere? Because you cannot see outside of you what you fail to see inside. Catch yourself today when you try to throw things in front of you, create stories, create limitations, create expectations. All those things have nothing to do with what is. Awake, be the witness of your thoughts. You are what observes and what you observe. The true fountain of life is inside you and beside you. We. Openness, emptiness, brainwashing, you guys. God consciousness, vigilant silence, opening the gift of this moment. And look for beauty. Who's in the center of this? What we are looking for is what is looking. And don't we wish to have more than what we've been told about God? Don't we wish to have a relationship with God? A give and a take. Yes? The state of being connected, an emotional association between the two. Don't we want that? Don't we want to know more about God so that we feel we can let go of some more faith? We can rise to the occasion and trust? Well, in order to trust, we have to know. And we have to communicate. If you can ask God anything from your heart, what would it be? Be we. And so we have another reflection. I bet you guys are tired of sitting here anyway. Again, find a quiet place to sit. Get comfortable. Open your journal. Do that exercise you did before. Listening, seeing beauty, feeling it, smelling it, etc. Put all these things together. Watch nature. Is it moving towards you? And within the beauty of the silence, don't do this too quick. Make sure you're present. Ask God. God? And preface it with the word God, like I say. God, are you there? Wait for an answer. If you don't hear anything, it's because you're still thinking. And some people will have the thoughts of, well, maybe I'm not doing this right. Let go of that too, please. It takes the time it needs. God, are you there? And then, after you've heard his answer, ask God your special question.